Okay, so this is the first flipped classroom presentation of the year. It's accompanying our short story unit. We're going to have a few slides of critical thinking exercise about the word literature and why do we read made up stuff anyway. And then the second half of it will be a quick review of literary terms that you've already learned before, but maybe we need to refine the definitions as you are graduating and moving up in levels of complexity. So let's consider the word literature in this context. Advanced placement, literature and composition, the class you're taking. What is literature? Is there a precise explanation? Let's go to the dictionary. Not that that's the end, but it's a good place to start. Dictionary says that it's the body of written works of a language, period, or culture. So, a car manual, clearly that does fit into the body of written works. But I mean, of our culture, but clearly that would be ridiculous if we studied that. How about a pottery barn catalog? Again, it fits into the body of written works of our culture, but it would be ridiculous to study it. Why? What's the unspoken rule that's distinguishing it? So their second definition is imaginative or creative writing, especially of recognized artistic value. I don't think anyone would argue that Dr. Seuss's whole body of work is imaginative and creative. And clearly, our culture has recognized it as having artistic value. Stephen King's It, I mean, it's been recognized. He's been a bestseller. But it's not the kind of literature that you'd ever really find in an AP class or in a college classroom. Why? What is it about that that makes it unlikely to exist in a class like this? Same questions for series of unfortunate events. Clearly, it's imaginative and creative, and it's been recognized in that it's bestseller. Kids love it. So, imaginative or creative writing, especially of recognized artistic value. My critical thinking question is, how is artistic value determined? And don't just say by an individual, because that's not the end of the answer. Yes, but we live in a culture, and the culture determines it also. So, what criteria has our culture or cultures used in the past and even today in ascribing artistic value? Who determines? How does one determine? How do we, the society, the people of a society, establish a more or less level playing field of what is recognized as being artistic value or literary merit? Let's consider the question from a different angle. You know, in this class, we're going to read a lot of made up stuff, fiction, and we're not alone in that. It's something that humankind has been doing for a while. When I've asked this question in the past, usually we get, well, enjoyment and entertainment. Clearly, for much of the time that our species has been reading, it hasn't competed so much for that enjoyment, entertainment time. But a second reason is the understanding of oneself and the universe one lives in. And here's two terms that you should know. There are two basic types of literature: commercial fiction and literary fiction. Now, I'm not going to suggest that the line between these two isn't very blurry sometimes. Commercial fiction is generally that fiction whose main or sole purpose is to entertain. It takes us away, we escape. We're on the beach and we're reading. Although, why would you want to escape if you're at the beach? Another time. Literary fiction is those books that lead us into the real world, enabling us to understand ourselves, the world, and perhaps empathize with others, to do what Atticus tells us is the important lesson of stepping into another person's shoes or skin. Commercial fiction, immediate satisfaction, requires little contemplative thought. And it usually is about, enjoyment. Although literary fiction aspires to contemplative thought. It aspires to provide a complex, lasting aesthetic and intellectual experience. Now, why is enjoyment contrasted with contemplative thought? I mean, I like contemplating subjects. I think you do too. It's just a little bit hard sometimes. And that's a key word. Hard. Commercial fiction isn't hard. Literary fiction tends to be. Commercial fiction is great to read. Usually doesn't benefit from a group of people coming together to study it. Nothing is revealed. Literary fiction is that fiction which more is revealed when people study it together. So, very quick review of some basic literary elements. A plot. A witch's hat, if you will. But we're going to be getting into the language of literary analysis. And sometimes we'll say, well, why do we have to use that precise language? Well, that's the language of literary analysis. These next slides is going to be talking about the language of literary analysis. If there's a surgeon in an operation room and he needs a scalpel to start the operation, but he asks the nurse for a knife, he's using a word that she'll understand. It means basically the same thing. A scalpel is a knife. But a scalpel is the language of surgery. And this is the language of literary analysis. Exposition. We can call it the beginning, but exposition is the word that we use to describe the intro. Notice that climax has complex meaning. There's not one simple definition of what climax is. It's varied depending on the book. When we get to the end, denouement. It's a French word. Denouement is the word that we should use to describe the ending of the book. Conflicts, of course, we might call them person versus person or person versus society. That is the same. That is interchangeable. Characterization. Rarely do we get much direct characterization. That is not require much of the reader. It's indirect characterization where the reader gets to the opportunity to put together who is this person. We got our protagonist, not the main character, the protagonist, and the antagonist. And taking note that the antagonist or antagonists do not need to be a character. Then we have more character types. Round are sometimes the protagonist, but not necessarily. Flat, and then stock. Now, stock characters are always flat, but not all flat characters are stock. A stock character is stereotype. More character types. Dynamic characters, one who changes significantly. A static remains the same. Protagonists are almost always dynamic. And then we have the foil character. And the Twilight series offers us a perfect set of foils. Joke. Setting, obviously we know what it is, but I can't tell you the number of times that students have only referred to the place, and the time when things happen is really important. Also remember what Foster says about it. Geography, weather, all those things matter in terms of the setting. Theme. Now, theme is one I'm going to talk a little bit more about. Theme is introduced to kids early on, and sometimes it's the moral of the story. And a lot of the literature we're going to read doesn't have a moral of the story. Theme is more complex than that. Consider two jokes. Daddy, the man next door kisses his wife every morning when he leaves for work. Why don't you do that? Are you kidding? I don't even know the woman. And then we have this one. Daughter, your young male friend stays until a very late hour. Hasn't your mother said anything to you about this behavior? Yes, father. Mother says men haven't altered a bit. Now, the first joke relies only upon a reversal of expectation. It's the second joke, though. It relies on a reversal of expectation, but it depends as much, if not more, for its effectiveness on some truth of human life. Namely, perhaps people tend to grow more conservative as they grow older. Or maybe it's parents often admonish their children for doing exactly what they did themselves when they were young. The theme of a piece of fiction is its controlling idea, central insight, and there's no prescribed method for discovering theme. But here are a couple of ways to do it, to test. Once you've got a sense of the theme, ask these questions, Sometimes we can best get at theme by asking, in what way or ways has the protagonist changed in the course of the story? And what, if anything, has the character come to understand? Sometimes the best approach is to explore the nature of the central conflict or conflicts and their outcome or resolution. And sometimes the title, in fact, frequently, the title will provide some important clue as to the theme. A couple more principles on theme. Don't equate topic with theme. Let me explain. Consider these hypothetical topics. There could be literature on these topics: parenthood, or loyalty, or coming of age, or education, or injustice, or conformity. All these are topics about which much literature has been written. Now, themes drawn from these hypothetical topics would answer the question, what does the story or poem or play or novel, what does the story reveal about the topic? Answering that question leads you to theme. It should never be expressed as a single word. Should never say the theme of To Kill a Mockingbird is racism. No, that's a topic that the book explores. The theme of The Book Thief is lost innocence. Again, it's a topic. What does The Book Thief say about loss of innocence? Answer that question and you're getting to theme. Then we get the Goldilocks principle. Not too hot, not too cold, not too big, not too small. Same idea. Theme should be stated as a generalization about life, but take care to make sure the generalization isn't larger than is justified by the story. So the Goldilocks principle. Now, in stating themes, you really want to, and this is important, avoid cliches like the plague. Cliches are as easy as shooting fish in a barrel. And as far as I'm concerned, one bad apple does spoil the whole bunch. So it's really like barking up the wrong tree to try to pull the wool over one's eyes, To each his own, but when discovering cliches, I'm going to give 110% because I know that what goes around comes around and all that glitters is gold. So why not stop and smell the roses? After all, time flies when you're having fun. Now, if your back is up against the wall, then you got to go back to the drawing board because if you're behind the 8 ball, you're better late than never. Sometimes cliches will be a blast from the past. Or if you're reading a book, you might be bored to tears, but you still have to find the theme. So keep your chin up. Maybe you got a knuckle under, but don't jump the gun because then you might find yourself in harm's way. But in a nutshell, themes come through trials and tribulations. So grab the tiger by the tail. And what comes around and goes around, But watch out that the author hasn't put something up his or her sleeve. Take the plunge and avoid cliches. A few more terms. We've got motif and ambiguity. To explain or exemplify ambiguity, do you see the old woman? Do you see the young woman? Do you see the old, young, old, young, old, young? Irony, we don't need to talk a lot about it. Foster talked a great deal about it, but it's an important topic. We've got the types of irony, verbal, and sarcasm is a form of verbal irony, but they're not the exact same. We have dramatic irony. Oh, Romeo and Juliet, so much drama. Situational irony, and then cosmic irony. It's cosmic irony when, for example, a pardon is delivered too late to stay in execution. Ah, the irony. Satire is a manner of writing or art that mixes critical attitude with wit and humor. It has an intention, though. The intention is an effort to improve humankind and human institutions. It's to try to prompt some type of reform by pointing out the absurdities. I think the cartoon is a form of satire. What's its message? So sarcasm and satire both have an intent. Sarcasm is simply to hurt. It's very frequently a form of verbal irony. So in a sense, it's cruel, as a bully is cruel. It intends to hurt. Now, satire also might hurt, but I think an analogy of seeing satire as a surgeon who is both cruel and kind. It gives hurt, it will cut you open, but in the interest of the patient or society, trying to remove that tumor. The difference, they both imply ridicule. Sarcasm is to hurt and humiliate. Satire is to reform or change. Now, irony has no intention. It is a tool. It is a screwdriver or a hammer or like a surgeon's scalpel. It's irony that does the job that sarcasm or satire want to do. Symbolism, yeah, I guess you know what that means. That's gross, weird, disturbing. And lastly, allegory. I'll let you read that one. I'm done. I'm under 18 minutes, longer than I wanted to go, but I will see you later. Bye-bye.